Ready to unlock your notary potential and boost your income? It's time to move beyond basic notarizations. In Notary, Niche Navigator by Derek Spruill, learn the most profitable specialized services. Learn to master high-demand areas like loan signings, international apostilles, and I-9 employment verifications. This essential guide offers new ideas to help you become the go-to expert in your field. Grab your copy of Notary, Niche Navigator by Derek Spruill today and start building your empire.
Usually, when you ask a room full of people to just picture a bank vault, their minds immediately go to that high-octane Hollywood drama.
Oh, absolutely. It's always a heist movie in their heads.
Right. You know the exact visual I'm talking about. Laser grids, crisscrossing the floor, a team of thieves rappelling from the ceiling in all black.
Usually with some sort of perfectly timed explosive strapped to a massive steel door.
Exactly, protecting rows and rows of flawless diamonds and gold bars. But, the reality of a modern bank vault operates on an entirely different spectrum.
It really does. I mean, the true nightmare that actually keeps banking executives and compliance officers awake at night isn't international jewel thieves.
Not even close. When you step into the real world of banking compliance and property law, and specifically our world of specialized corporate operations, that Hollywood heist feels like a minor inconvenience compared to the actual threat.
Yeah, the real terror is just a dusty, forgotten metal box sitting in the back corner of a vault.
A box where the renter hasn't paid their $50 annual fee in maybe 5 years?
Yeah. Because that single ignored box represents an absolute compliance minefield. The liability in there can cascade into hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees.
Not to mention punitive state fines and federal regulatory actions. So welcome to Notary Knowledge.
We are so glad to have you with us today.
For today's session, we are focusing on a concept we always love to talk about, Money-Making Monday.
Yes, Money-Making Monday is crucial. We always emphasize that specialized corporate gigs pay corporate rates.
Exactly. And navigating the highly regulated, wildly chaotic life cycle of an unclaimed safe deposit box is, it's perhaps the ultimate specialized corporate operation for a savvy strategist.
It really is the perfect niche for bank safe deposit box inventories.
And we are pulling insights from a massive stack of sources today to break this down for you. We've got banking compliance manuals, state treasury guidelines, regulatory technology white papers.
And of course, the extensive training materials developed by Dave McGuinn.
Right, Dave McGuinn. He is essentially the architect of modern safe deposit compliance, isn't he?
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, he's spent the last 50 years training hundreds of thousands of bank personnel.
And his manuals, they read less like dry financial documents and more like, tactical survival guides.
Yeah, survival guides for financial institutions, just trying to navigate this landscape without triggering a massive lawsuit.
So our mission today is to map out the hidden legal traps banks face when a box goes delinquent. We're going to cover the incredibly strict protocols of the force open, which is where we come in as notaries.
That's the drill route. It's a huge opportunity.
Exactly. And we'll get into the bizarre naming conventions of the objective inventory and what actually happens to the billions of dollars of forgotten property sitting in state treasuries right now.
But, to understand why a simple metal box creates such an immense operational headache, we really have to establish the foundational legal geography of the bank vault first.
Right, because we live in an era of digital banking. Our entire regulatory framework is built around intangible liabilities.
That is the exact point of friction. The modern banking system is highly efficient at managing those intangible liabilities.
Like a savings account.
Exactly. If you have $100,000 in a savings account, those funds do not physically exist in a designated cubby with your name taped to it.
Right, the bank just owes you that value. It's a digital liability.
Yeah, and it's subject to the laws of the state where you reside or where the bank is headquartered. But the safe deposit box completely shatters that digital model.
Because it takes up actual three-dimensional space, it holds physical, tangible property.
Exactly. And because the property is tangible, its custody is stripped away from standard banking regulations. It's governed instead by a very specific ancient legal doctrine called lex loci re citae.
Lex loci re citae, which translates to basically the law of the place where the property is situated.
Right. It's all about the physical soil.
I always visualize this concept acting almost like diplomatic immunity or like embassy rules.
That's a really good analogy, actually.
Yeah, because it absolutely does not matter where the customer lives, right? A customer could be a permanent resident of New York working for a company in London.
But if they rent a safe deposit box at a branch in Dallas, Texas, the physical soil where that metal box sits dictates the law.
That physical space is Texas territory. It is subject strictly to the Texas Property Code.
And that doctrine is the genesis of the operational nightmare for any multi-state bank.
Because they can't just have one blanket policy.
No, a financial institution cannot simply draft one centralized, streamlined corporate policy for managing safe deposit boxes nationwide. The legal parameters change the moment you cross a state line.
So they are forced to manage branch-by-branch compliance based entirely on the physical geographic coordinates of the vault.
Yes, and the conflict isn't just state versus state either. The sources highlight this fascinating structural tension where state laws are directly fighting federal laws over the exact same physical space.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we see this acutely when it comes to assessing fees on inactive boxes, don't we?
We do. Let's look at the clash between Texas Property Code Section 73.003 and federal regulations.
Okay, let's break that down.
So if I'm operating a state-chartered bank in Texas, the state property code explicitly forbids me from charging any inactivity fees that would slowly reduce the value of the box's contents.
Meaning Texas essentially mandates that if a customer stops paying, the bank must preserve the box and just eat the administrative costs.
Exactly. The state creates a protective shield around the dormant property. However, the federal overlay introduces a massive loophole for certain institutions.
Right, because of federal preemption?
Yes. Under 12 CFR 7.400, federally chartered national banks possess federal preemption. This statute grants them the authority to completely override the state's prohibition.
So a national bank actually can implement and collect those deposit account inactivity fees.
They can. They can systematically drain the value of the holding to cover their costs, provided they properly disclose those fees in the initial Truth in Savings Agreement signed by the customer.
That is wild. You literally have a scenario where two banks can be operating on the exact same street in Dallas.
Literally across the street from each other.
And the state-chartered bank down the block is legally paralyzed, forced to hold a delinquent box at a loss. But the national bank on the corner is actively charging inactivity fees, protected by federal law.
It requires compliance officers to possess an encyclopedic knowledge of not just where the vault is physically located, but what specific charter the institution holds.
And it also requires a precise understanding of the bank's internal timeline, right? Specifically, the operational difference between a box being classified as inactive versus dormant.
Yes, and these two terms are frequently conflated by the public and even by, junior bank staff.
I know, I used to confuse them.
Most people do.
Yeah.
But statutorily, they trigger entirely different workflows.
I tend to assume dormancy just means the customer hasn't swiped a card or visited the branch in a year. Like the timeline just expires.
And that assumption describes inactivity, not dormancy. Inactivity is simply the passage of time without a customer-initiated transaction.
And the standard threshold for that is usually 12 months, right?
Usually 12 months, yes. But the crucial modifier there is customer-initiated.
Meaning automated stuff doesn't count.
Exactly. If the bank's automated system credits a few cents of interest to a linked savings account, that system-generated action does not reset the clock.
So the customer actually has to physically access the box, make a manual deposit, or directly communicate with the institution to break that inactivity cycle.
Yes. So let's say year one passes in silence.
Mm-hmm.
The system flags the relationship as inactive.
But the physical items inside the box haven't changed. They are just sitting there. How does a metal box become dormant?
Well, the box itself and the physical items inside, they do not experience dormancy. What goes dormant is the legal relationship between the renter and the institution.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
so it's a relationship status.
Right. Dormancy is a secondary defensive phase. It is an internal freeze manually or systematically applied by the bank's security protocols.
So when an account or a box relationship goes dormant, the bank locks down access to restrict all transactions.
Precisely. It's a defensive mechanism against fraud.
That makes sense.
If a branch manager realizes a docs hasn't been accessed in 3 years, and suddenly someone shows up with a key demanding entry.
The dormancy freeze forces the system to throw up massive red flags.
Exactly. The bank must re-verify identity, ensure the person isn't just an unauthorized family member who simply found a key in a drawer somewhere, and clear the administrative hurdles before granting access.
The bank is legally acknowledging that they are holding property for an unresponsive entity, and the law restricts how long they can maintain that status quo.
Which introduces an incredibly vital dynamic for our listeners, especially those acting as savvy strategists in this niche.
Right. This strict legal framework of physical location, federal preemption, and liability is exactly why consumers and banks frequently find themselves at odds over what is actually allowed inside these vaults in the first place.
There's a massive disconnect between what the general public believes a safe deposit box is designed for and what banking compliance experts vehemently advise.
It's true. The discrepancy between consumer instinct and legal reality is stark. Experts like Dave McGuinn provide a very definitive, restrictive list of items that should never cross the threshold of a safe deposit box.
And the list actively contradicts human nature,
It really does. I mean, the primary rule is that you must never store items you might need immediately or items required during an emergency.
Which is astounding when you think about the psychological irony of it.
Yeah, a customer looks at their most vital, irreplaceable documents, an original passport, their last will and testament, original medical powers of attorney, detailed funeral and burial instructions.
And the immediate human instinct is preservation. We want to protect these documents from a house fire, a flood, or a break-in.
So we place them in the most secure environment conceivable, a reinforced steel vault behind a 2-ton door.
But by maximizing that physical security, we completely destroy the functional accessibility of the documents.
Because a bank vault operates strictly on banking hours.
Right. Physical security requires operational limitation.
So if a severe medical emergency occurs on a Saturday evening and a family member desperately needs that original power of attorney to make life-saving medical decisions,
They're entirely locked out. They can't get it until the branch opens on Monday morning. The security has completely defeated the purpose of the document.
oh wow, and the burial instruction scenario is even more logistically disastrous.
It's a nightmare. Imagine a customer passes away on a Friday. Their detailed burial instructions and the deed to their cemetery plot are locked in the safe deposit box.
The family cannot simply walk in and demand access, right?
No, they can't. The primary renter is deceased. Depending on the state's probate laws, the family may have to petition a court, obtain an order, and schedule a specialized inventory with the bank just to open the box.
And by the time they legally secure access to the burial instructions, they have likely already been forced to make alternate, really expensive funeral arrangements.
It transforms a tool of preservation into a massive bureaucratic trap.
And beyond those practical warnings, there are explicit statutory prohibitions too, right?
Oh, definitely. A customer cannot store illicit drugs, unregistered or illegal firearms, or explosive materials.
I mean, those are obvious legal boundaries.
You'd think so, but people try it.
But then we have to address the most controversial items stored in safe deposit boxes across the country.
Cash.
Cash, the storage of physical currency. Is it a criminal act to stack bundles of $100 bills inside a rented safe deposit box?
No, it's not.
Mm.
You are not violating a penal code by doing that. However, every single banking compliance manual, every risk management officer, and every legal advisor strongly cautions against it.
The logic seems sound to a skeptical consumer, though. I mean, if someone deeply distrusts the digital banking system or fears a systemic grid failure,
Placing physical fiat currency inside a hardened steel box seems like the ultimate hedge.
right. So why do the experts push back so hard against cash storage?
Because the consumer is operating under a really dangerous assumption of coverage. They are falling into what the industry calls the no insurance disclosure gap.
The no insurance disclosure gap, that is a critical vulnerability.
It is. The general public equates banks with the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. They know their money is protected up to a certain limit if the bank fails.
But the FDIC only insures the intangible digital liabilities of checking and savings accounts.
Exactly. The FDIC provides absolutely zero insurance coverage for the physical contents of a safe deposit box.
And the bank itself is not insuring those contents either, right?
No. The bank's institutional insurance covers the building, their employees, and the bank's own physical cash in the teller drawers.
It does not cover the private property locked in a customer's rented box.
And that gap creates catastrophic liability for financial institutions, primarily because so many banks completely fail to provide their renters with a clear, unambiguous, written disclosure.
A disclosure stating, the items in this box are not insured by us or the federal government.
Right. If a bank skips that disclosure step during the onboarding process, they are setting a ticking time bomb.
So imagine a natural disaster like a hurricane causes catastrophic flooding that breaches the branch vault, or a severe wildfire reduces the building to ash.
The physical contents of those boxes are destroyed.
And the customers inevitably file massive lawsuits against the bank, operating under the assumption that the bank was legally obligated to protect or insure their life savings, or their rare coin collections, or family heirlooms.
And if the customer was storing cash, the risk is magnified exponentially.
Because if physical currency is destroyed by floodwaters, or simply goes missing due to internal theft, the customer has virtually no recourse.
None. They cannot definitively prove to a court exactly how much untraceable cash was in the box to begin with.
Now, the sources do point out that the market has responded to this gap.
Yes, there are specialized third-party insurance providers now.
Right. The Safe Deposit Box Insurance Company, often referred to as SDBIC, which is underwritten by AXA ART. They provide specific policies that consumers can purchase
To ensure the physical contents of their box against floods, earthquakes, and fires.
But out of the box, no pun intended, the standard rental agreement leaves the consumer completely exposed.
It really does. And the scale of this issue, the sheer volume of mishandled, uninsured, and forgotten property is staggering.
We are not talking about a few misplaced rings here.
No. The operational sources estimate there is roughly $58 billion in unclaimed property currently floating through the United States system.
$58 billion. That is massive.
And a huge percentage of that total originates from safe deposit boxes where the renter simply walked away, forgot about the rental fee, or passed away without ever informing their heirs that the box even existed.
So what triggers the cascade? A customer stops paying the $50 annual fee. The bank is holding a locked box. The rent is delinquent.
And the bank cannot simply pry the door open and toss the contents into the alley.
No. The moment that account crosses the delinquency threshold, it initiates a highly scrutinized, legally perilous countdown.
We enter the protocols of delinquency.
Yeah.
In the compliance world, we refer to this as the path to the drill.
The path to the drill. It implies a sense of inevitable destruction.
Well, for the bank's compliance team, the destruction they fear isn't the lock, it's the liability.
Right. Every single step they take down that path must be meticulously executed and exhaustively documented.
They're basically building a defensive wall of good faith efforts to contact the owner before they ever allow a drill bit to touch the metal.
The timeline is governed by strict statutory intervals. It begins routinely enough. The bank generates an annual invoice for the box rent. The customer ignores it.
A set period later, the bank issues a friendly, system-generated 10-day reminder. It's polite. Perhaps you overlooked this invoice.
But the customer still fails to remit payment, so the timeline advances. The bank sends a 30-day past due notice.
And the language shifts. It becomes firmer, noting the account is now officially delinquent.
Finally, all the automated polite reminders are exhausted, and the bank must draft a formal, legally binding demand for payment letter.
And this final demand letter is where we see another massive federal overlay intersect with state property law.
Oh, this is fascinating. That final letter must include specific legal disclosures mandated by the SCRA, right?
Yes, the Service Members Civil Relief Act.
The SCRA is a powerful piece of federal legislation designed explicitly to protect active-duty military personnel from financial and legal harm while they are deployed.
The legal mechanism of the SCRA acts as a hard stop on aggressive collection practices.
So if a bank force opens a box for unpaid rent, and it is later discovered that the renter was a deployed service member stationed overseas, physically unable to receive or respond to their mail,
the bank has not merely breached a civil rental contract, they have violated federal military protections.
that triggers a completely different, infinitely more severe tier of federal penalties, regulatory censures, and reputational damage.
The bank must prove they cross-reference the customer against the Department of Defense databases before acting.
Wow. Okay, assuming the customer is not protected by the SCRA, the bank must send that final demand letter. And here is where Dave McGuinn's insights provide a brilliant, counterintuitive strategy for banks.
It really is brilliant, because the natural assumption is that if you want a customer to pay their overdue rent, you threaten the physical security of their property.
Right, you send a letter explicitly stating, if you do not pay your balance within 30 days, we will drill your box open and impound your private contents.
It seems like the ultimate leverage.
But McGuinn explicitly advises banks to never use the word drilling or mention impounding the contents in that final letter unless the specific state law absolutely forces them to include that exact terminology.
The mechanism of human behavior actually works in reverse here.
Why does threatening the drill fail?
Because McGuinn understands the statistical reality of the vault. The vast majority of safe deposit boxes that go deeply delinquent are completely empty.
The customer rented the box years ago, eventually came in, cleared out their documents or jewelry, and simply walked out without formally closing the account.
Exactly. They know the box is empty. So when the bank sends a terrifying letter threatening to drill the box, the customer reads it, laughs, and throws it in the recycling bin.
They think, go ahead, waste your money drilling an empty tin, I don't care.
The threat of physical compromise holds zero leverage over an empty space.
So what mechanism does McGuinn suggest to force a response?
He advises banks to utilize harsh, formal, legally aggressive language threatening the customer's intangible assets.
So the letter should threaten formal legal action against the individual for breach of contract and explicitly threaten to report the unpaid debt to national credit reporting agencies.
Yes, the customer absolutely does not care if the bank drills an empty metal box. But they care deeply if a $50 unpaid rental fee causes their credit score to tank by 80 points right before they try to secure a mortgage.
Threatening their credit profile forces the customer to pick up the phone, call the branch, and officially close the account, saving the bank the immense cost and liability of the drill process.
It is a masterclass in applying pressure to the correct vulnerability.
But despite the best drafted letters and credit threats, some customers will simply never respond.
Right. They have moved, they have passed away, or they have abandoned the property entirely.
And once that final statutory deadline expires, the bank's legal shield of good faith notification is complete. They have exhausted their options.
The law now requires them to act to clear the dormant property.
They must execute the force open. And this is exactly what we focus on for specialized corporate gigs. It is an incredibly highly regulated break-in.
It really is. It requires a level of orchestration that strips away all assumptions of privacy. They don't just hand a crowbar to the assistant branch manager after hours.
I mean, could you imagine? The physical drilling process is dictated by a foundational concept in bank security known as dual control.
Dual control mandates that no single individual can ever have unobserved access to a sensitive asset.
So when a box is drilled, internal policy and regulatory guidelines require the physical presence of at least 2 bank employees for the entire duration of the process.
And typically, at least one of those employees must be a fully authorized bank officer.
Because the moment a single person is left alone with the contents of an impounded box, the chain of custody is irreparably broken.
The temptation for theft is obvious. But even if the employee is perfectly honest, the mere accusation of theft by a returning customer becomes impossible to disprove.
Dual control provides a corroborating witness.
But the bank employees do not perform the physical breach. The bank contracts a certified locksmith or a specialized safe drilling vendor.
And the vendor's objective is surgical. They must drill out the specific pin tumbler mechanism of the lock without compromising the structural integrity of the heavy steel door itself.
Right, because the bank needs to pop a replacement lock into the existing housing and immediately rent that box to a new customer.
So we have the locksmith operating the drill. We have 2 bank officers observing. But that is still not enough legal protection.
No, it's not.
And for our audience listening, this next requirement is where specialized corporate gigs truly intersect with the notary profession. This is the whole point of building this niche.
It's the objective inventory affidavit. A notary public must be physically present in the vault to witness the entire opening process.
And in many strict jurisdictions, state law explicitly requires that this notary be an independent third-party professional completely unaffiliated with the financial institution.
They cannot be a bank teller who just happens to have a notary stamp. They must be an external observer.
This is such a great opportunity. Like, you can't rely on strategies like Sam in South Dakota, who just pays for lead sites to get these bank gigs. It's about direct B2B networking to become that independent third-party professional, they call.
Exactly. You have to build those corporate relationships.
And you definitely don't want to be like Caleb in Colorado, undercutting prices to get your foot in the door. Specialized corporate gigs pay corporate rates.
Never race to the bottom. But anyway, back to the drill process. The locksmith breaches the lock. The door swings open.
The bank officer reaches into the dark space, pulls out the metal bond tin, and places it on the viewing table.
And what happens next is arguably one of the most fascinating, bizarre, and legally treacherous moments in banking compliance.
The execution of the notarized inventory.
The core challenge here is liability through identification. How does a bank officer document the physical items they are pulling out of the box without accidentally taking on the immense legal liability of an appraiser?
The rule is absolute. A bank must never appraise, value, or definitively identify the materials they impound.
The naming conventions they are legally forced to utilize sound utterly absurd to a normal person.
They really do. It sounds like a space alien attempting to describe human artifacts using only base physical characteristics.
It's because the risk of a substitution claim is catastrophic.
Right. If a bank officer pulls out a sparkling ring, assumes it is valuable, and writes "one diamond ring" on the official notarized inventory affidavit,
They have just legally certified that the bank took possession of a genuine diamond.
they have created a legally binding document testifying to the gemstone's authenticity.
So if the irate customer finally returns a year later, demands their property, looks at the ring and claims, wait a minute, my ring was a flawless 3-carat internally flawless diamond. This object you are handing me is a cheap piece of cutic zirconia. You swap my diamond for glass.
A bank has absolutely no defense. Their own notarized affidavit, signed by their officer and the independent notary, explicitly states they took a diamond.
They are financially responsible for replacing a flawless diamond they never actually possessed.
To shield themselves from this substitution trap, banks utilize strictly objective, non-appraising language.
Let's practice mapping out these mechanisms because it is wild to execute in real time.
Let's do it. Imagine you are the bank officer. You pull out a heavy, intricately carved gold ring featuring a large ruby surrounded by 2 smaller diamonds. What do you dictate to the notary?
You have to strip away all assumptions of metallurgy and gemology. You dictate 1 yellow metal band containing 1 red stone and 2 clear stones.
Okay, what if you pull out a velvet pouch, untie it, and pour out a collection of heavy silver coins dating back to the 1800s?
You cannot verify the silver content without a metallurgical assay. You dictate 10 white metal coins of various sizes.
You pull out a rolled-up canvas, you unroll it, and it is an obviously valuable antique oil painting, perhaps signed by a master.
You are not an art authenticator. You dictate 1 rolled canvas featuring multicolored paint.
You pull out a recognizable high-end luxury watch. It says Rolex right on the dial.
Counterfeits are exceptional. You dictate 1 yellow metal and glass timepiece bearing the brand stamp Rolex. You verify the stamp exists. You do not verify the authenticity of the watch.
It requires immense discipline to look at an obvious gold coin, know intrinsically exactly what it is, and force your brain to legally reduce it to yellow metal.
But that objective inventory is the only armor the bank wears against a fraudulent claim.
It's so important for notaries doing these gigs to understand this. You might even have to correct the bank officer if they try to dictate gold ring to you.
Oh, definitely. You have to know the rules better than they do sometimes.
Like maybe you have to be like Fred in Florida and fire a client if their internal controls are too messy and they refuse to follow objective inventory rules because it puts your notary commission at risk.
Exactly. Protect your commission first. However, as the sources reveal through a truly chilling real-world case study, all of that careful paperwork means absolutely nothing if the physical items are not meticulously secured after the inventory is concluded.
This transitions us perfectly into the cautionary tale of the $187,000 manila envelope.
Dave McGuinn highlights this specific lawsuit to illustrate a concept called safekeeping or disaster.
It is a textbook example of a bank executing the difficult technical procedures flawlessly, only to experience a catastrophic failure at the finish line.
Let's map out the mechanics of this failure. We have a small financial institution managing a delinquent renter.
And up until the post-trail phase, their compliance is perfect.
Right. They executed the statutory notification timeline. They sent the SCRA-compliant demand letter. They hired the locksmith and the independent notary.
They drilled the box under strict dual control. They performed the objective inventory perfectly. They discovered a large, heavy collection of coins. They correctly documented them as white and yellow metal coins.
At the moment the notary stamped that affidavit, the bank's liability was virtually zero. They were protected by the objective inventory.
But then the safekeeping phase initiated.
Yeah. The bank employees gathered up the heavy coin collection, placed the coins into a standard paper manila envelope, licked the seal, and this is the detail that sends chills down the spine of any risk manager.
They placed that paper envelope into an unlocked file cabinet sitting in the general work area of the branch.
It is a total collapse of internal controls. They abandoned the dual control environment and placed an unidentified potentially high-value physical asset in an unsecured location accessible to any employee, cleaning staff, or vendor who walk through the back office.
18 months pass. The envelope just sits in that unlocked drawer. Then, out of nowhere, the previously unresponsive renter charges into the branch lobby, irate, demanding to know what happened to his safe deposit box.
And the safe deposit attendant, just trying to defuse the situation, walks across the open lobby in full view of the screaming customer, opens the unlocked file cabinet, and retrieves the paper envelope.
The renter tears it open, dumps the coins on the desk, and the situation instantly escalates from a customer service issue to a massive lawsuit.
The renter alleges that his highly valuable, meticulously curated rare coin collection, which he claims represented his entire life savings, has been stolen by the bank staff.
He asserts that the bank employees swapped his rare numismatic coins for worthless pocket change while the envelope sat unsecured for a year and a half.
And he completely dismisses the bank's objective inventory affidavit as a fraudulent cover-up.
The case inevitably goes to trial. The bank's legal defense team stands up in court. They present the perfect paper trail. They show the jury the demand letters. They put the independent notary on the stand to testify about the objective inventory.
Show the affidavit reading white and yellow metal coins.
But then comes the cross-examination. The plaintiff's attorney forces the branch manager to admit under oath that they stored a customer's life savings in an unlocked, unmonitored file cabinet for 18 months.
The moment that admission is made on the record, any legal defense the bank possessed completely evaporates.
They admitted to breaking the chain of custody. They admitted to failing their fiduciary duty to secure the impounded assets.
The jury was reportedly so disgusted by the bank's lackadaisical, careless attitude toward the customer's property that they didn't just award the renter the value of the coins.
No, they awarded the plaintiff $107,000 in damages.
And on top of that staggering penalty, the bank had to pay $80,000 in their own legal fees, defending a case they were destined to lose.
A $187,000 corporate mistake, all stemming from the decision to use an unlocked drawer instead of a secure vault.
The industry classifies this specific type of failure as unattended vault liability.
It is a universal truth in banking litigation. A financial institution will almost always lose a lawsuit if they leave a customer or an employee alone in a vault, or if they fail to maintain a strict, continuous, and verifiable chain of custody for impounded property.
You simply cannot prove the items inside that paper envelope weren't tampered with if anyone in the branch possessed the physical opportunity to open that file cabinet.
So how does a modern compliant bank handle safekeeping? Paper envelopes are clearly a relic of the past. What are the specific mechanisms of modern asset packaging?
The modern standard completely eliminates the possibility of undetectable tampering. The impounded items must be placed into heavy-duty, highly specialized, camper-evident plastic security bags.
These are definitely not standard zip-top bags.
No, not at all. They utilize specialized chemical adhesives and complex seals.
If an employee attempts to peel the seal open, apply heat to melt it, or use a solvent to dissolve the glue,
The plastic visually warps, tears, or permanently reveals the word void across the closure.
it provides absolute visual proof of integrity. And these bags feature unique, non-repeating serial numbers and scannable barcodes printed directly onto the heavy plastic during manufacturing.
Correct. The dual control team places the items inside, seals the bag, and logs the specific serial number. But crucially, the notarized objective inventory affidavit does not go inside the tamper-evident bag with the physical items.
That is a vital detail. If you put the inventory list inside the sealed bag, the next compliance officer who needs to audit the vault has to break the tamper-evident seal just to read what is supposed to be inside.
You've destroyed your chain of custody just to perform a routine audit.
Exactly. To solve this, modern security bags feature a separate, clear, sealed pouch integrated onto the outside exterior of the main bag.
The notarized affidavit is folded and placed in that external pouch.
So anyone auditing the vault can read the exact contents, verify the notary stamp, and check the external barcode without ever compromising the integrity of the primary seal protecting the physical assets.
Once sealed, these specialized bags are logged into a dedicated safekeeping vault, not a file cabinet. Any subsequent movement of that specific serialized bag, whether to audit it, hand it to a returning customer, or ship it to the state, requires a new entry in a continuous dual control logbook.
It is genuinely staggering to calculate the financial and operational weight of holding this property. The bank has eaten the cost of the drill vendor. They paid the independent notary.
They purchase specialized tamper-evident bags.
They are devoting expensive, secure vault real estate to hold property for a customer who actively ignores them. At what point does the bank get to wash its hands of this liability?
When does this abandoned property stop being a localized banking problem and become a problem for the state government?
Right. That transition represents the next massive compliance hurdle. We are entering the escheatment phase.
Escheatment is the formal legal process of transferring abandoned or unclaimed property from a private institution to the custody of the state government, which holds it in perpetuity for the rightful owner.
But because we're dealing with physical property governed by Lex Leci Res Cite, escheatment is anything but a standardized national process.
We are thrown right back into the chaotic state-by-state patchwork of conflicting laws. The bank cannot drill a box on Tuesday and ship the contents to the state treasury on Wednesday.
No, the state forces the bank to act as a long-term warehouse. Every state legislature establishes its own mandatory holding periods, commonly referred to within the industry as the dormancy period or the compliance rule.
The bank must retain the physical items in their own secure safekeeping vault, absorbing all the associated liability for a legally mandated number of years before the state will even legally permit the transfer.
The 7-year compliance rule is frequently cited as an industry baseline, but it is merely a suggestion when you examine the actual state statutes.
The sources indicate Tennessee requires a 4-year holding period. Kansas mandates a 5-year hold. Other states demand the full 7 years.
A national bank has to actively monitor dozens of different ticking clocks simultaneously.
And managing those divergent timelines is only the preliminary hurdle. The truly chaotic aspect of the escheatment phase is navigating the bizarre, highly specific, and often contradictory rules regarding what each individual state treasury will actually agree to accept from the bank when the holding period finally expires.
The Kansas Unclaimed Property Guidelines provide a perfect example of this operational chaos. Kansas operates with a highly restrictive intake policy. They absolutely refuse to accept a massive list of physical items.
If a bank drills a box in Wichita and the objective inventory reveals toiletries, over-the-counter medications, random liquids, matchbooks, or bodily fluids.
And we must pause to consider the reality that state treasury guidelines explicitly had to include the phrase bodily fluids.
Yeah, that really makes you stop and think.
It forces you to wonder what customers are prioritizing in these vaults. Are we talking about baby teeth, keepsake locks of hair, vials of blood for some sort of private testing?
Whatever the specific item is, the state of Kansas has drawn a hard line. They mandate that the bank must not send those items to the state capitol.
The bank's compliance officer must explicitly document these items on the escheatment report, officially label them as destroyed or trash, and arrange for the physical, legal disposal of the biohazards.
And if the box contains controlled substances, illegal narcotics, or illicit firearms, the bank cannot escheat those to the Treasury. They must coordinate a direct handover to local law enforcement agencies.
The state regulations effectively force the financial institution to operate as a hazardous waste disposal service and a law enforcement liaison, tasks completely outside the scope of traditional banking.
But the Kansas regulations contain another specific rule regarding cash that seems completely devoid of commercial logic.
Right. I assume that if a customer owes the bank $100 in back rent, and the bank drills the box and finds a stack of $100 bills, the bank simply seizes one of those bills, settles the outstanding debt, and forwards the remainder to the state. The debt is satisfied.
That assumption relies on a logical commercial framework, which does not exist in this specific statute. The Kansas law strictly prohibits banks from utilizing any physical cash or coins discovered inside the safe deposit box to offset or pay down the customer's delinquent rental fees or the cost of the drilling vendor.
Wait, let me map the mechanics of this. The bank has suffered a financial loss. The customer owes the bank money specifically for the rental of the space where the cash was hidden.
Right.
The bank legally breaches the space, finds a crisp $100 bill, and they are legally forbidden from keeping it to settle the exact debt that caused the breach in the first place.
Yes. Under Kansas law, the moment the property qualifies for escheatment, its legal status shifts. It effectively belongs to the state, held in trust for the unresponsive owner.
So the state views the bank as a custodian, not a creditor with first lien rights on the physical cash.
Exactly. The bank must remit the entire value of the discovered currency to the Kansas Treasury. The bank simply has to eat the loss on the unpaid rent, the locksmith fee, and the notary fee.
That is infuriating from a corporate operational standpoint.
It is, and the frustration compounds when you look across the country at a state like Oregon. Oregon swings the legal pendulum in the complete opposite direction.
How so?
In Oregon, the state acts as a fierce advocate for the bank's balance sheet. When a delinquent customer finally realizes their property was escheated and they track it down at the Oregon State Treasury, the state refuses to hand it over immediately.
Wow.
Oregon forces the claimant to provide documented proof that they have successfully paid the bank all outstanding rental fees and drilling costs before the state treasurer will authorize the release of the impounded property back to the citizen.
Oregon essentially deputizes the state treasury to act as a debt collection enforcement arm for the private financial institution.
While Kansas strictly forbids debt settling. And then you encounter the regulatory environment of New York.
New York operates on what we can call an exclusionary liquidation basis. The New York Treasury simply does not want to manage the physical clutter of millions of citizens.
They lack the warehouse space or the desire to catalog endless boxes of heirlooms.
So they will only accept very specific, highly liquid or culturally significant items, primarily military metals and face value standard currency.
For everything else, the antique jewelry, the rare stamp collections, the silver coins, the baseball cards, the state forces the bank to handle the liquidation.
The bank must hire certified auctioneers, sell the physical items on the open market, subtract their legally allowable fees, and remit the clean liquid cash proceeds to the state of New York.
Conversely, the state of California demands a policy of comprehensive intake. California regulators want the bank to send them absolutely everything discovered in the box, physical items and all.
They want the jewelry, the documents, the coins. They prefer to centralize the holding and eventual auction processes at the state level.
Put yourself in the shoes of a senior compliance officer for a massive multinational bank. You are managing hundreds of vaults located in Kansas, Oregon, New York, and California simultaneously.
Depending entirely on which state line a specific branch sits across, your team has to seamlessly pivot between playing the role of a hazardous waste disposer, a debt collector, a professional auction house liquidator, and a legal compliance expert.
And the penalties for mismanaging these transitions are explicitly punitive. The states view unclaimed property as a massive source of revenue, as they get to utilize the funds while holding them in trust.
So they aggressively audit banks to ensure compliance.
Yes. In Wisconsin, for example, if state auditors determine that a bank willfully neglected to deliver unclaimed property within this strict statutory time frame, the bank faces a mandatory punitive fine.
And what's the fine?
18% annual interest calculated against the total value of the delayed property.
18%. The state is applying predatory credit card interest rates as a punitive weapon against the bank.
If a bank forgets to escheat a box containing $100,000 in gold coins for a few years, the fines could completely consume the bank's regional profit margin.
Managing this chaotic patchwork of state rules using manual spreadsheets and legacy software is not just inefficient, it is a ticking financial time bomb.
Which brings us to the ultimate operational stress test for safe deposit compliance, and the reason the entire banking industry is desperately pivoting toward technological intervention. We have to examine the catastrophic friction generated by mergers and acquisitions.
Mergers and acquisitions M&A activity are the absolute crucible where manual compliance processes melt down and fail spectacularly.
The sources provide a terrifying hypothetical that happens in the real world constantly.
Let's hear it.
A massive $175 billion national bank acquires a regional peer institution that operates 1,100 physical branches across multiple states.
Overnight, the compliance officers at the acquiring bank inherit an unmanageable volume of localized data. They inherit tens of thousands of active and dormant safe deposit boxes.
They inherit physical lease agreements signed on paper decades ago, featuring legal terms that no longer comply with current corporate policy.
They inherit incompatible, obsolete legacy software systems. And worst of all, they inherit the decentralized, manual Excel spreadsheets that individual branch managers were using.
Spreadsheets tracking which boxes were drilled, which envelopes are sitting in unlocked cabinets, and what property is due for escheatment to the state.
Attempting to integrate that data manually, row by row, across 1,100 branches is an impossible task. It guarantees massive escheatment failures and guarantees those 18% punitive fines will trigger.
But compounding this logistical data nightmare is an incredibly strict, unforgiving federal compliance twist regarding international sanctions.
Right. The Office of Foreign Assets Control, commonly known as OFAC.
The OCAP regulations, specifically under 31 CFR Section 515.326, introduce a fascinating interpretation of the legal concept of custody.
This federal regulation explicitly decrees that a safe deposit box is legally in the simultaneous custody of both the renter and the financial institution.
Even though the bank does not possess the customer's physical key and cannot open the box without drilling it, the federal government legally considers the bank to have active custody of the hidden contents.
And because the bank legally possesses custody, they are fully bound by federal international sanctions laws. This creates an enormous operational choke point.
Before a bank can physically relocate a safe deposit vault during a branch closure, or before they can authorize a locksmith to drill a delinquent box, the bank must actively cross-reference the names of the renters against the federal OFAC sanctions databases.
The federal government mandates that financial institutions ensure they are not accidentally safeguarding, transporting, or liquidating physical assets belonging to international terrorists, sanctioned foreign oligarchs, or members of hostile regimes.
You cannot effectively run a real-time OFAC cross-reference on 50,000 acquired safe deposit renters if your tracking system relies on sticky notes, local hard drives, and fragmented Excel files.
It is guaranteed to fail.
Which is why the banking sector is undergoing a massive, desperate shift toward RegTech regulatory technology.
We are seeing the rapid deployment of specialized platforms explicitly designed to handle this exact niche. Software solutions like SafeChief, developed by Yotta Techports, or the SecureBox system developed by Staff Systems.
These tech platforms are engineered to eradicate the spreadsheet entirely. They introduce end-to-end digital chain of custody tracking.
When a new renter is onboarded at the branch level, the billing is immediately automated. When that renter stops paying, the RegTech system doesn't rely on a branch manager checking a calendar.
The software automatically calculates the exact state-specific dormancy timeline based entirely on the branch's zip code. It knows Kansas is 5 years and Tennessee is 4 years.
And crucially, these systems enforce rigid, step-by-step, force-open workflows. When the dual control team enters the vault to supervise the locksmith, they are no longer relying on their imperfect memory of a 300-page compliance manual.
They are holding a tablet running the RegTech software. The system physically forces them to follow the law.
It forces them to scan the unique barcodes on the tamper-evident security bags. It forces them to use the tablet's camera to take time-stamped, geolocated photos of the drilled lock and the packaged assets.
It forces the independent notary to provide a digital signature directly on the screen, locking the objective inventory affidavit into the system.
It builds an unalterable, cryptographically secure digital audit trail. The bank can prove exactly who was in the vault, exactly what yellow metal was discovered, and exactly which secure cabinet the tamper-evident bag was placed into.
And when that 5-year or 7-year statutory clock finally expires, the RegTech platform performs its most valuable trick. It automatically generates the NAUPA2 standard electronic reports.
NAUPA represents the National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators. They dictate the exact digital format that state treasuries require for escheatment intake.
The software automatically packages all the metadata, the geolocations, the objective inventories, and the lessee information perfectly.
It formats the data so cleanly that the state treasuries accept the digital file without triggering an aggressive manual audit of the bank's records.
If we look at the strategic evolution here, compliance in the safe deposit space is no longer viewed merely as an irritating back-office chore. It has elevated into a critical, proactive risk management strategy.
By automating these chaotic workflows, banks protect their institutional reputation. They systematically prevent those devastating 18% punitive state fines, and they construct an ironclad, mathematically provable defense against any wrongful drilling or substitution lawsuits.
I always compare it to modern logistics. Trying to manage a modern multinational bank's safe deposit escheatment process on a manual spreadsheet is identical to trying to run a global Amazon fulfillment center using only a clipboard and a pack of sticky notes.
It is a system guaranteed to fail, and in the banking sector, the failure will be spectacularly publicly expensive.
But RegTech isn't purely a defensive shield. The sources highlight a fascinating pivot occurring in the industry, where banks are utilizing these exact same software platforms to transform this massive compliance liability into a value-added, revenue-generating service.
This brings us full circle back to the no insurance disclosure gap we discussed earlier. Because banks explicitly do not insure the contents of the boxes against floods, fires, or earthquakes, The RegTech compliance vendors are integrating solutions right into the software.
They are facilitating direct partnerships with specialized third-party insurers, like the Safe Deposit Box Insurance Company, backed by AXA-RT.
The mechanism of this partnership is brilliant in its efficiency. When the customer sits down at the branch desk to sign the initial lease agreement, the RegTech software prompts the bank employee to offer a direct-to-consumer insurance policy right on the spot.
The customer gains immediate peace of mind, knowing that their physical cash, their vital documents, or their family heirlooms are fully insured against physical destruction by a third party.
The bank generates a new stream of non-interest fee revenue by facilitating the insurance policy. And most importantly, by clearly offering third-party insurance, the bank establishes documented proof that the customer knew the bank wasn't liable.
Effectively removing the catastrophic liability of a flooded vault completely off their own shoulders.
It completely reframes the narrative. It transforms the safe deposit box from a dangerous legacy legal track into a modernized, highly secure, and actively profitable product line.
We have mapped out an immense amount of complex legal and operational territory today. Let's briefly retrace this incredible journey.
We followed the perilous life cycle of a simple metal box, starting with the strict, unyielding legal doctrine of lex loci recite, proving that the physical location of the vault supersedes everything.
We learned the logistical nightmare of storing emergency documents in a time-locked room and the immense financial risks of storing uninsured cash.
We meticulously walked the path to the drill, exploring the precise notification timelines, the massive federal SCRA protections for deployed military, and the psychological tactic of threatening a customer's credit score rather than threatening to drill an empty box.
We detailed the strict dual control mechanisms, the absolute necessity of the independent notary, and the bizarre, highly defensive yellow metal naming conventions of the objective inventory.
We analyzed the catastrophic $187,000 legal consequences of breaking the chain of custody and leaving impounded property in an unlocked manila envelope.
We navigated the sheer operational chaos of the state-by-state achievement laws, jumping from Kansas demanding the destruction of bodily fluids, to Oregon acting as a debt enforcer, to Wisconsin threatening 18% punitive fines.
And finally, we saw how modern RegTech digital barcodes and NUPA2 formatting are saving banks from the catastrophic data failures of massive mergers and acquisitions.
For our audience of specialized professionals, the immediate practical takeaway is vital. Keep your own accounts active. Communicate with your financial institutions. Pay your minor rental fees.
And aggressively update your physical mailing addresses so you do not inadvertently become a statistic trapped in that $58 billion unclaimed property pool.
But as we close out this session, I want to leave you with a final, provocative concept to ponder.
Throughout this entire discussion, we have relentlessly focused on the immense legal, operational, and financial friction generated by storing physical items.
We are rapidly accelerating toward a society built almost entirely on intangible digital assets. We're moving toward cryptocurrency, digital property deeds, biometric cloud storage, and decentralized blockchain ledgers.
Within that context, the physical heavy steel safe deposit box feels almost anachronistic. It feels like a relic of a previous century.
Exactly. As those physical boxes become increasingly rare and the state-by-state compliance burden for banks becomes heavier and more expensive to manage, will these underground steel vaults eventually go entirely extinct?
Will major national banks simply refuse to offer physical storage to consumers?
Or is there a massive counter-trend silently building?
Will the increasing frequency of ransomware attacks, systemic grid failures, and sophisticated cyber threats make physical, off-the-grid, completely analog storage more valuable, more exclusive, and more legally complex than ever before?
When the digital infrastructure fails, a heavy metal box locked inside a concrete room might become the only asset protection you can actually trust.
It is a fascinating tension. The invisible war between the efficiency of the digital future and the absolute, tangible security of the analog past.
Don't just be listeners of the knowledge, be doers of the knowledge.
Take these insights and map out your own specialized strategies. We encourage everyone to check their own state's unclaimed property website. You might just have some hidden treasure waiting for you, hopefully safely escheated and not sitting in an unlocked file cabinet somewhere.
We also highly encourage our listeners to buy the Notary Knowledge books written by Derek Spruill and visit the Notary Knowledge website for more deep-level strategies.
If you want more visual content, check out the video podcast No Notary with Eddie Montes Travis and catch Marylyn's 90 Seconds of Notary for quick, actionable tips.
Please rate the show, subscribe to our feed, and share the podcast with other professionals looking to elevate their specialized gigs.
Email your questions to Derek at dereksproul.com. We will try to answer as soon as possible at the end of our shows.
Today's session was executive produced by Derek Spruill, lead writer Marylyn Lee Trotter, graphics by Eddie Montes Travis, music by Thomas Bynum, and produced by Magnificent Works Business Solutions.
This is Notary Knowledge. Until next time.
Need a blueprint to start your mobile notary business? Don't stumble through the process. You need an outline for success. Introducing the Mobile Notary Blueprint by Derek Spruill. Build your thriving mobile business and protect yourself from costly mistakes with expert advice. Buy your copy of the Mobile Notary Blueprint by Derek Spruill from any online bookstore, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble Bookstore, booksofmillion.com, bookshop.org, Mobile Notary by derekspruill.com, or download from Kindle and build your successful notary business today.